You're Chogu Abdul, you're a researcher. Have we lost him? No, still there.
I'm here.
You're still there. Okay, you're a researcher, a writer, speaker, organizer, a university lecturer in philosophy, and a foremost Nigerian futurist. You've founded and co-founded several fora and associations as part of your interest as a philosopher and a transhumanist. You are a foreign ambassador in Nigeria to the United States Transhumanist Party, and obviously a member of TAFFD. And you've also been a contributing author to several transhumanism handbooks and publications. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me.
That's right. I've got your slides. Thank you very much. You should be able to see those on the screen now. Please just ask me to advance through the slides.
Right.
We'll do a question and answer session at the end of your presentation.
All right. So should I go ahead?
Yes, please. Yeah.
All right. It's a pleasure being here. I am Chogu Abdul from Nigeria. I'm here today to present what I titled Afrofuturism, Techno-Ghanism, and Transhumanism in Africa. Networking ideas for sustainable African and global advancement. The idea here is to bring together three different philosophies and see how we could network them into a tripartite of ideas that would push Africa forward and as well bring advancement to humanity and our planet in general. Yeah, so that's what I want to be presenting. Perhaps let's move to the first slide, the background. First slide, please, background. All right. Yeah, so for our background, we have several points outlined there, but basically we're trying to look at the fact that our current world in the 21st century is characterized by progress, but as well there's this fear and uncertainty over the project of civilization and the future of humankind. Now, much of the progress that has been made from the last half of the past century into the first 2 decades of the current century can be attributed to science and technology, but notwithstanding all that, there is still much crisis and existential risk posed before mankind, also as a result of technological advancement. Now, part of this crisis includes climate change and global warming as a result of the use of technology in putting much pressure on our environment, and to some extent, this could be blamed for the current COVID-19 pandemic around the world, which some have interpreted to be as a result of a kind of imbalance in our in the human relationship with nature and the environment. Now, still, next slide, please. Next slide. Next slide. Yeah. All right. So there is a need for humans to rethink our relationship with nature in our drive to achieve progress and in our use of science and technology to achieve progress. Now, for this, there's a philosophy called techno-Ghanism, which pretty much encourages the use of technology, but in a way that restores and preserves and even improves nature. Now, coming down to Africa, here in Africa, we have several crises. We have the economic crisis, we have the environmental crisis, and we also have existential crisis. Now, much of our projections for development in Africa in the 21st century has to come through our use of ingenious technologies in solving our problems and as well achieving development in the process. Now, there is much optimism, much confidence that this 21st century is the African century, and that there's much potential for transformation of Africa in the 21st century. Now, but for this to happen, I submit that Africa needs futuristic thinking. Some part of the problems we've suffered in Africa is this tendency to cling on to the past and only the immediate present. Not many Africans are giving into futurism. Yeah, but good enough, there is a school of thoughts or a philosophy called Afrofuturism, which exists in the world today. And for some of us, it is very important to build on this philosophy of Afrofuturism in trying to steer Africa towards a revolution in its human and material conditions. Now, transhumanism is also very important in this regard. And as we proceed in this discussion, I will argue for why there's need to incorporate transhumanism and Afrofuturism together in building a narrative for the future of Africa. And also having techno-Gaianism as a guide in the use of technologies in building this future Africa and the world. So basically the background, we're trying to say that there's a need for a networking of ideas from Afrofuturism, techno-Gaianism, and transhumanism, which will present a solid strategy to lead Africa and humanity and our planet into a significantly improved and prosperous future. Next slide. All right, so Afrofuturism, what is Afrofuturism? Like I said earlier, the current 21st century has been described as an African century, but Africans need a bold new narrative to inspire us into making this century ours. Now, for this, the philosophy called Afrofuturism may suffice, and for just some description, Afrofuturism can be seen as an inspiration, for a new thought in the African experience. Now, we could see this as a cultural aesthetic, as a philosophy of science, but also as a philosophy of history, which combines science fiction and fantasy with African mythologies in a way that it also explores the developing intersection of African culture with technology, reimagines the African past, reimagines science, and reimagines the future from a Black and African perspective, and envisions what could be, what possibly lies out there for the African story. Now, Afrofuturism also promises to inspire new technologies, new ideas, and socio-political changes, and it conveys a bold sentiment that the future will belong to Africa, and it follows fiction. Now, the story and then reality follows that story. So if African storytellers can tell a good story about the African future, which leads the rest of the world into a new stage of advancement in civilization, then from that story, from such an Afrofuturistic story, we could make the future to belong to Africa. Now, just for an example, I included here the sci-fi movie Black Panther and its fictional city of Wakanda, which is an example of Afrofuturist reimagination of Africa, and a presentation of a highly technologically advanced African society, which was achieved, or which could be achieved through a combination of science, technology, elements from the African past, from African traditions, in fusion with visions of the future. So that's part of what Afrofuturism can conjure up for us, and we can work towards it. Next slide, please. Next slide.
But there's a delay in the transfer, I think, of the image.
Okay, the previous slide, you have to go back a step. Previous, okay, next slide. Next slide.
Okay.
All right, good. So here we come to techno-Gaianism. And for sake of time, I'll just skip through many of the details there. But basically, there's an argument by some environmentalists, especially the dark green environmentalists, that technology is the problem we have in for much of the destruction of the environment, and it also poses a threat to our planet and our species. So the argument of dark green environmentalists is that we should jettison technology, embark on a broad relinquishment of technology to save the planet. But on the other hand, there's this other school, which is called bright green environmentalism, which argues that rather innovations in technology, especially in green technology and clean energy and nanotechnology, biotech, some other areas of technology, actually provides promise of protecting and even improving the environment. So from the perspective of bright green environmentalism, it is still technology that we should use creatively to protect the environment, to improve the environment, and as well pursue our visions or our aspirations for progress as a species. So it's a win-win. We still hold on to technology, and we are progressing as a species, but also improving the environment, and also creating new businesses and avenues for growth and development. So under bright green environmentalism, there is this movement called techno-Gaianism, which is basically a philosophy that advocates the use of alternative, creative new technologies in preserving our ecosystem, but also still harnessing technologies for our visions of progress as a species. So techno-Gaianism is like, let's say, a very strategic approach in the bid to both retain our use of technology and as well progress while also preserving and improving our environment. So in this case, there's no need to abandon the use of technology, especially as we can both use technology to improve ourselves and improve the environment in the same breath. So next slide, please. Next slide. Next slide, Slim. Next slide. All right, so here we come to transhumanism. Sorry, I had to skip much of the details because of limitations in time. Now, transhumanism, as we have here, I start with a quote from Max Moore, which describes we humans as a transitional stage standing between our animal heritage and our post-human future, and this post-human future stage will be reached through genetic engineering, life-extending biosciences, intelligence intensifiers, smarter interfaces to swifter computers, neural computer integration, virtual reality, AI, neuroscience, nanotech, off-planet migration, and several other technologies. Now, there's also a definition of transhumanism there as the intellectual and cultural movement that affirms the possibility and desirability of fundamentally improving the human condition through applied reason, especially by developing and making widely available technologies to eliminate aging and to greatly enhance human intellectual, physical, and psychological capacities. Now, in our world today, there is, among the technologies that Max Moore outlined, which will drive our transition from the stage we are now to that of a post-human species, some of them include nanotechnology, biotechnology, information technology, and cognitive technology. Now, in our world today, we see a convergence, especially of what is called the NBIC technologies. That's nano, bio, info, and cognitive technologies. These are H+ oriented technologies. And by extension, some have hailed this convergence as accelerators or a new engine for the projected fourth industrial revolution, which is an event that is envisaged to bring a lot of transformation on our human institutions, and as well as bring about significant economic and political change. Now, this, so from this, we see the connection between transhumanist technologies and development in industry, but also changes in social, political, and cultural institutions. Now, next slide, please. Okay, so here I make a case that Africa, previous slide, yeah, that Africa stands to benefit from transhumanism and to harness transhumanism as a gateway into participating in the fourth industrial revolution. The world is expecting a fourth industrial revolution, and one of the easiest ways that Africa could join that revolution, adapt and utilize H+ oriented technologies, which are actually engines and accelerators of this forthcoming fourth industrial revolution. So in our bid for a giant leap into joining the rest of the world in that fourth industrial revolution, we may need to embrace transhumanism to serve as a gateway into that historical phase. Now, there's a quote there, or there's an entry there which we took from Philippe Vaudot about transhumanism being both descriptive and normative. Descriptive in the sense that it talks about how we can enhance both our world and persons, and normative in the sense that we ought to actually enhance both our world and persons. Now, to end that segment, I pointed out that transhumanism involves both a desire to redesign systems in twofold. There's the person engineering, which has to do with redesigning the human body and mind, and then there's the world engineering, which has to do with redesigning our external environment. Both of these have their criticisms, nevertheless. Next slide. All right, so here, having gone through the previous slides, I tried to show why there's a need to incorporate Afrofuturism and transhumanism. Like we've seen before, Afrofuturism explores the use of technology in tandem with the African, with a reimagined African past, but also with a sense of African heritage, with some incorporation of some elements from African traditional thought, but also with an openness to change, to novelty, and to progress. So this goes to show that Afrofuturism is very much compatible with transhumanism. To some extent, both of them are geared towards the same a vision of the future. And for Africa, we will need to both incorporate Afrofuturism and transhumanism in telling a new story, both for ourselves as Africans, but also for humanity. A new story of hope and a new story of progress for humanity, bringing some of the rich resources that Africa has to offer and blending them with modern science and technology, and imagining both the African past and a new future for Africa and for humanity in general. So basically, the argument here is Afrofuturism and transhumanism need to be brought closer together. Next slide. Okay, but now there is this argument, or there's this question: as for Afrofuturism and transhumanism, what kind of technologies should they use in building this future we're talking about? And they both come under criticism, especially from dark green environmentalists, as using technologies that may pose threats to the natural environment. So one of the strongest critique to transhumanist application of technology, especially in world engineering, is that it is involved in an agenda which has a serious consequence in the form of environmental destruction. Yeah, but this criticism can only hold when the presence of techno-Gaianism in transhumanism is not recognized. Now, good enough, techno-Gaianism as a philosophy that both encourages use of technology for progress and the improvement of the environment, good enough, techno-Gaianism can be incorporated into the techno-scientific philosophy of transhumanism, especially as a way of addressing the critics of transhumanist application of technology in world engineering. At this stage that we've come in our civilization, we've crossed the Rubicon of technology, to use a word from Philip Godot, and it is impossible to jettison technology and just take a reverse direction. So the only argument, or the reasonable argument that could be made, is we need more technology. Only we need more cleaner and environmentally friendly technologies. So with respect to the fear or the concern about the environment, in light with the implications of transhumanist technologies, the argument here is that we should move towards a techno-Gaian transhumanism, as in transhumanism should be made to accept many ideas from techno-Gaianism, because it makes sense after all. Techno-Gaianism, it's also pro-technology. It's a pro-actionary kind of philosophy. It only advocates for cleaner, safer, alternative technologies. So if transhumanists, in their bid for world engineering, incorporate more of the sensibilities of techno-Gaianism, we then move towards a techno-Gaian transhumanism, which would still help us in our bid for the progress of our species, but also engineering the world in a way that would preserve and improve the environment. So again, it's a win-win. Now, luckily enough, there is a techno-Gaian transhumanism is possible, and fortunately enough, there is already a sizable contingent of techno-Gaians now who constitute like a portion of the global transhumanist community. So yeah, there are techno-Gaian transhumanists in the world today, and that for me is a welcome idea. Next slide. Next slide. All right. So like I've said, there's a sizable contingent of techno-Gaians now who fortunately constitute the global transhumanist community. In this same vein, we also need, previous slide. In this same vein, we also need techno-Gaianism to be fused with Afrofuturism in developing eco-friendly, culturally aesthetic, and economically profitable use of technologies in redesigning our environment and envisaging a future Africa. In essence, what we are also calling for is a techno-Gaian Afrofuturism. So both for transhumanism and for Afrofuturism, the incorporation of techno-Gaianism would provide for us a model of the use of technologies to improve both our species and also keep our environment preserved and in good shape, possibly even improved. All right, so so now we'll come to networking the ideas for sustainable African and global advancement. And in a nutshell, that's what I've been trying to say all through this discussion. There is a need to bring together these three ideas of Afrofuturism, transhumanism, and techno-Gaianism in our pursuit of African and global advancement. Now, as I've said before, transhumanism in Africa is being conceptualized by some thinkers as an engine to drive Africa into participation in the forthcoming global fourth industrial revolution. Now, also the visions of transhumanism can be linked with Afrofuturism for African technological, economic, cultural, socio-political transformations. And then after we succeed in combining transhumanism with Afrofuturism, there is a need to have this combined, this combination of ideas rightly supported by techno-Gaianism for us to achieve a powerful and beneficial tripartite of ideas that will drive the progress of Africa, humanity, and the environment. So in essence, we are saying that incorporation of Afrofuturism, transhumanism, and techno-Gaianism will present us with a highly strategic network of ideas for sustainable advancement of the African continent, of humanity, and our planet in the 21st century and beyond. Next slide. Next slide. All right, so in conclusion, our world at present needs transhumanism to navigate through and overcome the challenge of COVID-19, to prevent against further occurrences of such pandemics, but as well to translate the existential crisis posed by COVID-19 into an opportunity for the acceleration of the fourth industrial revolution and the arrival of the transhuman era. Actually, COVID-19, in the bid to address it and overcome it, we see the employment of emerging technologies. We see calls for the use of AI. We see a growing migration to our use of virtual reality, nanotechnology and biotechnology, and some other technologies will be brought into play, both to help us navigate through this challenge of COVID-19, but also to rebuild our world in the post-COVID-19 era. So it is up to transhumanists to capitalize on the moment, to argue first for the need for us to upgrade our biology as a species so as to prevent against susceptibility to such viruses and illnesses, but and also in our bid to recover economically post-COVID-19, there will be this opening for several H+ oriented technologies to stimulate the economy once again. So it's an opportunity for transhumanists around the world to translate the current challenge of COVID-19 into the beginning or the arrival of the transhuman era, as well as the fourth industrial revolution. Now, as said earlier, Africa needs transhumanism for us to transform our civilization economically, technologically, and culturally in the 21st century. And this is our key moment now that transhumanism stands at a vantage point to go mainstream, this is a key moment for Africa to also tap into the transhumanist agenda and join in the transhuman civilization that is at the thresholds. The future of Africa, again, will benefit from a smart combination of Afro-futurist and transhumanist visions. As I've said earlier, there's a need to combine these two visions, and this will lead to a full maximization of our continent's human and material potentials. But then again, when we've combined Afrofuturism and transhumanism, we need to include techno-Gaianism into the mix, and that this will guide the safe, clean, creative, environmentally friendly, and profitable use of technologies for the sustainable advancement of Africa and the globe going into the future. So therefore, a networking of Afrofuturists, transhumanists, and techno-Gaian ideas is pragmatic, profitable, and desirable for the future of Africa, for the future of humanity, and the future of our planet. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'd like to open the floor to any questions. If anyone has anything. Yes, Janadi.
Yes, thank you, and good morning to you, though it is evening for me. It's good to finally speak with you. First of all, I would like to make a request. If you could share your presentation slides with me sometime in the future, I would be interested in reading some of the more detailed narratives that you didn't have time to cover.
All right.
Yes, thank you. And then my second observation is that I think you might be interested, if you have the opportunity, to attend my presentation tomorrow, where I will be discussing how Africa can apply certain transhumanist policies to combat COVID-19. Essentially, exactly what you were describing needs to happen. And as you're aware, the US Transhumanist Party had its platform vote in late March, and you had stated that you would have liked to see ideas that were more universal to the world and that could be adapted in places like Africa. So this presentation will try to at least start building that framework, and I would be interested in feedback in this regard. But with regard to what I would like to hear you expand upon today, would be, what are some of the technologies that you think large numbers of Africans could adopt tomorrow if they had the will, versus what are some of the technologies where you think there are significant bottlenecks to adoption in Africa, even though they may be widespread in the rest of the world?
All right, thank you. Thanks, Janadi. And I will surely join your discussion later today. For me here in Nigeria, it's later today. Now, for your question, I think the technologies that Africans will be more ready to embrace, if they are widely available today, my own opinion, will be prosthetics. And that is because we have so many people with disabilities in Africa, paraplegics, those with amputated limbs, people who have suffered one accident or the other. And I realized that even among the most conservative Africans, personal friends that I've spoken with, who may have some reservation towards transhumanist technologies, one of them recently had his limbs amputated, and when the idea of prosthetics was suggested to him, he embraced it as a matter of necessity. So And looking at him, one could already see that fusion of man and machine going on in his body. And he was fine with it because begin his control and independence for himself. So if prosthetic technologies are brought into Africa, because several Africans have such problems, we are already, there's this openness to adopt them and use them because they come in the form of solutions to problems. So with more innovations in prosthetics, even to the extent it gets to neuroprosthetics, I think out of necessity, Africans will adopt them. This is a different scenario compared to robotics on its own, just a robot with some level of AI in it. I think Africans will still have some level of fear towards the idea of intelligent robots, within our environment, given this our own material time. So robotics or intelligent robots may be a kind of technology that Africans may take some time to adapt to, even though we get to use AI in our transportation and in our education and other sectors without many people even realizing this is AI. But when it is embodied in a kind of a robot that can be physically seen, I suspect several Africans may still be unnerved by that. So to answer your question, I think prosthetics may be more easily adapted, but on the other hand, robots, intelligent robots, or even there was a time we had this backlash here in Nigeria over the issue of sex bots, and it was a big deal. And taking the pause, I realized many Africans, or at least Nigerians, still found that idea weird. Yeah, so, but then on the other hand, technologies like AI, like biotech, when they are used in agriculture, when they are used in energy or in transportation to solve some of our challenges here in the areas of energy, in the areas of agriculture, in the areas of education, when they are brought in this way, I think Africans will also adopt them readily for our banking, for our like I said, for our transportation, for our energy problems, and for agriculture, and for medicine also. I think AI, biotech, to some extent, nanotech will also find their way into Africa when they come to solve some of these our present challenges. But the idea of intelligent robots, I think that's still where some backlash should be expected from Africans. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. This is quite interesting. Now, what do you think with regard to Africans' likelihood of accepting autonomous vehicles? Because those are essentially robots on wheels, especially some of the driverless models, which could be used in a pandemic to deliver supplies to people, but they're designed not to have a steering wheel. They're designed not to have a driver sitting there. So do you think Africans would accept them in large part because they don't look human-like, even though they are robots in effect?
Yeah, not to some extent. There are some innovations that really look cool from let me say from at first sight. Now, I think driverless cars, even if we are to anticipate some initial resistance, I don't think that will last too long because especially among young urban Africans, there's this craze for what is trendy. So, so long as we get to see images from the outside world, and we see that this is something that has become trendy. Within a short while, I expect, within a short while, the neophobia, that fear for new ideas, and even the technophobia would phase out with regards to driverless cars, because it comes with this touch of trendiness and class, and some level of luxury and comfort. So the Africans may not really have that consciousness that this is another kind of robot, or a kind of intelligent machine. They just see a car that is cool enough in driving itself. And I remember from my childhood, there's this TV series we used to watch called Knight Rider. I don't know how many of you remember it. Knight Rider was a TV series about a driverless car. And as kids, we were very excited about that idea. Even back then, that was in the early 90s. Early 90s. We watched Knight Rider, and we loved that idea of a car that that drives itself. So I think many of us have had that picture of a driverless car in our subconscious for a long time, so that when it begins to materialize in our environment, it may not take much of an effort to adapt to it. But on the other hand, our roads and our traffic and transport system in Africa are not quite fluid. So where I expect some challenge is how such technologies will even function well here. We still need more GPS, we still need more good roads, we still need even more systems of addressing our streets, all right? So, and even getting our traffic rules and regulations right. So that's where I expect the challenges. The driverless cars may come to Africa, but then the system here, our transport and traffic and housing system may not allow them to function well until we put those other areas in order. So I fear there may be some problem domiciling that technology here in Africa, because our transport system still has some challenges that need to be addressed.
Yes, thank you. This was quite interesting. So it seems the problem of infrastructure is greater in Africa than the problem of the willingness to adopt these technologies. And if there were an effort to significantly modernize the infrastructure, then the population would be fairly receptive to most of the technologies, at least the ones that don't obviously look like humanoid robots.
Yeah. Yeah. That's my own take on the issue.
I think the technology for driverless vehicles would have to be vastly improved for recognition of potholes and such, like certainly even within the UK, let alone some rural parts of Africa. You've shared some great ideas. Well, will be 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, which is 9 a.m. New York, 2 o'clock in the afternoon for the UK and Nigeria, 18:30 for India, and 11 p.m. in Sydney. Thank you so much for joining us. sharing your thoughts and the activities that you've been involved with. Certainly, I think there's some collaboration between yourself and Janadi that could be done offline.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'll put you both in contact if you would like.
Yeah, sure. I would like that.
Yeah. Okay. Offline, I'll put you both in contact with each other. Fantastic. Well, unless there are any other questions, I think we could draw this session to a close. Thank you very much, and obviously this day's activities to a close. Day 2.
All right. Thanks for having me, and I would like to congratulate TAFFD for this successful conference.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, pleasure.
So that's a wrap then for today. As I just mentioned, we're reconvening at 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 9 a.m. New York, 2 o'clock in the afternoon for the UK and Nigeria, 18:30 in India, and 11 p.m. in Sydney. Thank you, and peaceful rest. Take care now.